School of Management Studies, IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course Mmpc 006 Marketing Management for MBA program. Block 3 Distribution and Promotion Decisions. Unit 11 Personnel Selling and Managing Sales Personnel. Part 2.
Recruitment and selection of salesmen. The sales manager's job is basically to provide leadership to the sales force. However, if he does not have the right persons, it will be difficult for him to get desired results. Therefore, the first step or the first function of the sales manager is to be concerned about recruiting and selecting the right type of salesmen. A good salesman creates a good image of the company as the customer evaluates even the company from the way in which the salesman has behaved. It can thus be said that the salesman who is working under you represents your face and that of your organization. To the people he meets casually as well as your customers he handles, he is you and your company. Therefore, how he conducts himself and how he speaks reflect on you and your company. In addition, proper selection would result in better employer-employee relations as the salesman would be happy in his job. There will be a small turnover, meaning that the salesman will not leave out of disgust or inefficiency. The organization will have a more effective sales force and will enjoy good customer relations. The selection procedure. Adequate selection requires a proper step-by-step approach. You must first know the type of persons you want. Then it becomes necessary to find out from where you can get them. Then alone can arise the question of actually going about getting the man, testing him, and making your final decision. Let us now go through these steps. In actual practice, often organizations are not very clear as to the type of person they require. They just decide that we need salesmen. We have to be more specific. In order to do this, it is necessary to analyze the job for which the salesman is going to be selected. In good companies, there are job descriptions available which give details of the particular job. Even this is not enough, because we want to know the type of man who will be able to fill that job. This is described as man specification and gives the qualities required of the person who can do this job properly. The job analysis would indicate, for example, number 1, the difficulties involved in performing the duties, like in case of high-priced products, the selling job becomes difficult. Number 2, the basic duties and responsibilities. Number 3, the conditions of work. And number 4, the personal characteristics required to handle the job. The qualities required in the salesman may include these, namely, number 1, general qualities, number 2, specific qualities, and number 3, technical qualities. At times, technical qualities are required. If this is not required, one should not try and get a man with a technical background and pay unnecessarily more money. Number 1, honesty and reliability. The salesman must be one who can be trusted as he has to handle even money besides merchandise. Number 2, a self-starter. A salesman is often on his own, particularly the traveling salesman. He must therefore be able to work without constant supervision. Number 3, orderliness. He should have a neat and pleasing appearance and must be one who keeps things clean and in a good working condition. Number 4, friendliness. Perhaps friendliness is one of the most important qualities. He must be sociable and must get along well with people, as otherwise he will not be able to sell at all. Number 5, self-control. He should be able to handle difficult people and not lose his temper or become upset. Number 6, good handwriting. He should be able to write legibly, as salesmen often have to write orders and complete report forms. These are the few qualities. In addition, many more are given by different people like courtesy, industriousness, initiative, judgment, persuasiveness, resourcefulness, and so on. We now come to the preparation of an application blank listing questions required to be answered by the applicant. From the man's specification, we have realized the qualities we are looking for in the salesman. Appropriate questions have to be now drafted so that the answers to these questions will indicate the suitability of the applicant who will thereafter be considered. Now we are ready to get people to apply for the job as we are clear regarding what we want and the application blank is ready. Now the question of locating the appropriate person arises. Some of the sources from which recruitment can be made are: number 1, internal sources, that is, from inside your own staff as well as through recommendations from existing salesmen or customers. Number 2, external, like advertisements, employment exchanges, educational institutions, from competitor staff, and placement services. Advertisement is the commonest source from which recruits are obtained. However, the advertisement should be sufficiently detailed so that you are not deluged with a large number of undesirable or inappropriate applicants. It is common knowledge in India that even when the advertisement states specifically that chartered accountants need only apply, in practice even BComs apply because they feel that they know accountancy. Therefore, if such a qualification was not mentioned, you can well imagine how many more unsuitable applications would have been received. Now that we have got a number of applications, we must go through them and weed out those which are obviously undesirable or inappropriate for our requirements. Then comes the important step with which you, as a manager, would very likely be concerned, namely the personal interview, when you come face to face with the applicant and have to determine his suitability for the job. You may indulge in one or a number of interviews as you may deem appropriate. The greatest advantage of the interview is that you can now see what he looks like and check if he has any undesirable expressions. We have mentioned that certain qualities are required. By asking appropriate questions, you can judge whether he has those qualities from his answers during the interview. Some organizations indulge in psychological and personality tests. It should be mentioned here that it is difficult to devise proper psychological tests that can predict a good salesman with high degree of accuracy. Hence, it is not given great importance. Now that we have almost arrived at a final decision, we must check the references given by him regarding his character, educational background, and previous experience. This is an important step and should not be neglected. The medical or physical examination is not always necessary and should not be indulged in unless it is needed for certain qualities essential for the job. For example, if we want a salesman who can distinguish colors, a medical test showing whether he is color blind or not would certainly be appropriate. Similarly, if he has to travel consistently, his health condition becomes relevant. Now the time has arrived when the final decision has to be made about his suitability. Everything done so far has to be reviewed. We must find out whether he is a willing worker. He should not be a rolling stone, which can be found out immediately if he has had many previous jobs. The trend of the jobs, progressive or not, will show you his desirability for recruitment. Thus, a final decision has to be taken now. Training of sales personnel. Now that we have made the selection, we must provide for adequate training so that the applicant really becomes suitable for the job. Gone are the days when people thought that salesmen were born and not made. Research has clearly indicated that the person can be trained to become a good salesman. Research has clearly indicated that there are some of the factors which exist in case of a good salesman, that is, a salesman properly trained as against one who was not so trained. These factors are: he makes a more enthusiastic presentation. Number 2, he has the ability to clinch the order. Number 3, he has greater product knowledge. Number 4, he pays closer attention to ensure that services are rendered to the customers. Number 5, he has superior territory organization. Number 6, he answers objections better. Number 7, he can obtain more customer interviews. And number 8, he keeps abreast of competition and competitor activities. The objectives of training are to give certain types of information to the salesman, namely, number 1, knowledge of the company, its background and history. This will give him a perspective as to how he fits into the organization structure of the company. Number 2, knowledge of the company's products and more particularly the selling points or advantages that he can emphasize with a view to close the sale. Number 3, knowledge of customers, that is, details about the types of customers and how they should be handled. Number 4, knowledge of sales and other procedure. Number 4, knowledge of sales and other procedure which is prescribed, such as how to get orders, what forms to fill up, the sales reports required, etc. And number 5, training is the art of selling or salesmanship. The last point is extremely important. Salesmanship is desirable for everybody because it is the art of persuasion. Now that we have discussed the benefits and goals of training, we should consider the 3 basic types of training which have to be given. In the beginning, break-in or induction training is given, which gives him the basic knowledge or material as already indicated. However, this is not sufficient in practice. The salesman must thereafter be given coaching actually in the field and put in charge of a senior salesman who is also a good trainer. In addition, from time to time, stimulation or motivational training is given at the sales conferences and other places so that the salesman is all the time being updated and motivated. Having decided what knowledge or information has to be given and where it is to be given, it now becomes necessary to determine how this has to be done. This is what is meant by training methods. Now that you have given your own answer, let us mention that there are basically 3 types of training methods. Namely, number 1, the telling method, number 2, the showing method, and number 3, the discussion method. The telling method is the oldest form of communicating information sharing and is often described as lectures. These can be quite boring and the salesman may feel that he is not a student in a classroom. However, this is a method which is extremely good in communicating information quickly. The other methods take a little time, although they may be more effective in terms of results. In the showing method, the trainer actually shows or demonstrates the technique. This is the actual doing, more or less like role-playing, and is a very effective method. He may take the salesman to a customer and actually sell. The salesman watches him carefully and thereafter there is a discussion on what happened and how he would have behaved in the particular situation. Finally, the discussion method involves the participant in the training process. It permits the trainee to ask questions. He can thus clarify any doubts which might exist in his mind. Even appropriate case studies can be provided for discussion and training the salesman. With the emergence of new technologies, processes, and systems in place, you find extremely technical products in the market. To sell such new generation technical products, it becomes necessary to possess sound technical knowledge and expertise by the salesman to sell and offer services to the customers becomes vital. To sell such new generation technical products, it becomes necessary to possess sound technical knowledge and expertise by the salesman to sell and offer services to the customers. And hence, technical knowledge becomes vital. This paves way for new training methods to be offered to the sales force in the light of fast-changing taste and preferences of the customers in the light of these new technologies and processes. Today, you can see firms offering online training for their sales team, making it more interactive and flexible both for the employer and employees. You may identify and make a study on such training methods to keep updated and informed. Motivating the sales personnel. The aspect of motivating consists of getting the best effort from the salesman while he is performing his job. If he is a good salesman and likes to sell, he will automatically be motivated. Thus, motivation is a function of the salesman himself and the organization as well as the environment in which he is operating. In the early days, the disciplinary aspect fear was used to motivate people. Later on, the economic factor came into existence and stress was laid on appropriate methods of remunerating the sales force. Finally, apart from the hope of reward replacing the fear of the sack, psychological incentives are also sought to be used. Incentives. Incentives are factors which provide motivation in a positive direction to the person concerned. These may be of two types, namely financial and non-financial or psychic. We will now deal with these two types of incentives separately. Financial incentives are incorporated in the compensation plan. There are several methods used for remunerating salesmen. Some of the methods used for remunerating or compensating the sales force, namely, number 1, a straight salary, number 2, straight commission on sales, number 3, salary and commission on sales, number 4, salary plus commission on sales above a certain amount, number 5, salary plus commission on varying totals or different types of goods, and number 6, salary plus a share in the profits. Hence, it must be noticed that there are many methods of remunerating salesmen. In case of a straight salary, the salesman is paid the amount irrespective of his performance. Thus, the remuneration is not geared to his productivity. However, some organizations are of the view that if you select and train a salesman properly and provide adequate salary, it will motivate him as he knows that he cannot get increments as motivational factors. As against this, the opposite view is that a straight salary makes a salesman complacent. If he is given commission on sales, there is a direct link of the remuneration with his sales performance. It is true that the commission method is more motivating. However, it can be undesirable where, though no fault of his own, the salesman cannot earn enough commission to support himself and his family. Therefore, the third method is the most popular one, where a basic salary is given to provide him with the basic necessities of life. If the salesman wants to enjoy life, he must earn his commission. This provides the maximum motivation from the compensation structure. Thus, motivation should be built into the system itself. It should, however, be remembered that the compensation plan should be appropriate. It should be simple and not complicated so that the salesman understands and appreciates it. It should be personal so that it would motivate the particular salesman. The plan should be moderate and within the reach of the salesman. If he finds that he cannot earn the commission, he will stop trying to increase his sales. The compensation should provide a continuous incentive. Apart from remuneration as an incentive, there are other methods of motivating salesmen. There are certain needs requiring satisfactions in the human being. These are not merely physiological. There is a need to belong or to be loved. This can be provided in the work situation by the supervisor under whom the salesman works. there is the question of esteem. A pat on the back at the right time can go a long way to motivate the salesman. Finally, there is self-actualization, that is, a person wants to do better and get promoted further. Thus, there are certain needs which can be satisfied through an adequate incentive plan of a non-financial nature. These are called psychic wages. For example, number 1, make the salesman like you, be fond of you, and want to work for you as a supervisor. Number 2, praise him when praise is due. A good rule of human relations is to praise in public and scold in private. However, idle flattery will soon be found out by the intelligent salesman. Number 3, respect his personal ego. He should not be belittled. As already indicated, do not criticize him in the presence of others. Number 4, allow him to participate. That is, to discuss with you and help you in the shaping of decisions, particularly those which affect him. For example, when setting the sales target, the salesman can be consulted before a quota is fixed for that particular salesman. This is what is meant by participation or the modem leadership technique. Number 5, set a good example. This is perhaps the most important. The subordinate generally watches his superior and often tries to copy him. Number 6, give him emotional security by showing him that he is working for a good company, a good boss, and a good product. And finally, show him how he would benefit and not how the company benefits from his performance. Thus, for effective motivation, you must inform him as to what is expected from him. Tell him what the company gives him, use the carrot technique to get his cooperation, and above all, set a good example. Controlling the sales personnel. Now we come to the final aspect of the sales management function, namely that of controlling. Management consists of planning, organizing, motivating, and controlling. Goals and objectives are provided in the planning stage, and the controlling stage is used to evaluate how well those objectives have been reached. It is necessary to have some form of control over the sales force. It is true that if salesmen are selected properly and trained appropriately, very little control will be required. However, some form of evaluation is considered necessary in management. The best method of control is naturally personal contact. This is, however, not possible from, let us say, the sales manager's level right down to the salesman's level. A supervisor has personal contact over the salesman directly under him. However, as the organization grows, some other form of control has to be adopted. Correspondence is one method where distance can be obviated. However, the most popular method of controlling salesmen is through salesmen's reports. Let us discuss a little more in depth the question of evaluating the salesman's performance from the salesman's reports. The report is generally drafted well and often in a printed form, which the salesman can complete quickly. The salesman resents report writing type of activity, and therefore the report must be drafted very carefully. Some of the salient features of report writing are: Number 1, the report should be brief. Number 2, as far as possible, a printed form should be used where a check mark would answer most of the questions and very little of writing is required. Number 3, information should be so arranged that it can be summarized and used at the home or head office. Please remember that you should not ask questions where the answers are not going to be used by the organization. And number 4, carbon copy must be provided for the salesman. There are many types of reports used in practice. The tendency is to have many reports, and the advice is to have as few as possible. Some of the types of the reports used are: Number 1, expense account report. Number 2, report of daily calls covering the entire day and giving details for each call separately. Number 3, report on prospective customers to indicate how much missionary work is being done. Number 4, report on customers' complaints. Number 5, reports on demonstrations. Number 6, reports on working plans and tour plans. And number 7, report of customers' inventories. You can thus well imagine that there are a host of reports from which a selection can be made. Today, the reporting system has changed drastically in view of information and communication technology being in place to connect and report to the manager or the head office about the whereabouts and the daily activities of the salesman to all the concerned. Allocation of territories. Now, supposing you have about 100 salesmen to cover the whole of India, you naturally have to divide India into 100 parts and allocate one part to each salesman. We are sure you must have realized that you cannot just take the map of India and cut it into 100 equal parts and allocate them to the salesmen. If you do this, some of your salesmen may get mountains or deserts where no prospects exist. Some of the factors which determine the allocation of the territory are: Number 1, prospect density, that is the number of likely customers in the area concerned. Number 2, extent of ground to be covered. Number 3, possible volume of sales. Number 4, frequency of visits required. Number 5, intensity of selling required, that is the time taken up by each interview. Number 6, convenience of getting from one place to another includes modes of transport provided or available. Number 7, the rate at which the shopkeeper buys and resells. And number 8, whether the product is easy or difficult to sell. Considering all these factors and the numbers of salesmen available, it then becomes possible to allocate the territories intelligently. It should be remembered that salesmen are anxious to get as large a territory as possible. Experience has, however, indicated that a smaller territory is better as a salesman takes less time in traveling from one prospect to another and provides greater depth of effort. It is better to have this intensive rather than the extensive cultivation of a territory. Now let's summarize the unit. In this unit, we discuss the nature, role, types, and the planning process involved in personal selling function. Personal selling is a direct person-to-person selling and promotion method. The specific role and goals of personal selling vary from firm to firm depending upon nature of goods marketed, distribution system used, and the sales strategy adopted by a firm. The changing market environment calls upon the sales force to transform itself in order to perform a more creative role. Based on the degree of creativity required, McCurry classifies the sales positions into 7 types, namely merchandise deliverer, inside order taker, outside order taker, missionary salesperson, sales engineer, tangible product seller, and intangible product seller. To accomplish the job of making a sale satisfactorily, a salesperson should follow the basic elements of the selling process. These are preparation, prospecting, pre-approach, approach, sales presentation, handling objections, closing the sale, and post-sale follow-up. An understanding of each element helps a salesperson in developing skills necessary for successful selling. You have understood the importance of the selling effort and the functions of the salesman of the company. Basically, the sales manager has to get the targeted sales, that is, sales as decided by the marketing manager or the top level of the organization. He has to do this through the sales force at his disposal. He must therefore select very carefully. Once you have recruited somebody, it is not necessary that he would have the proper ability. Adequate training must therefore be provided so that he understands more about your company, your products, and your policies as well as your philosophy. Thereafter, the question of motivation becomes important. We have appreciated how financial incentives can be provided to the salesman. Finally, some extent of controlling the sales personnel is essential. Now let us briefly recapitulate what we have covered. We have realized that we are on a very important aspect of managing the human resource. People are difficult to handle, and yet if we provide the correct environment, they will be able to manage and motivate themselves. It is therefore essential to provide a proper system for motivation rather than have a detailed controlling procedure in managing the firm's sales personnel.
We were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program, course code Mmpc 006, Marketing Management. Course Coordinator Professor T.B. Vijay Kumar, School of Management Studies IGNOU. Voiceover by Harpreet Kaur. Edited by Savita. Program assisted by Tarannum Jahan and Jagbandhu Jana. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.